It was just another busy afternoon in the city when Jenny Wong walked down Main Street. She always wore her white face mask, not because she was afraid of getting sick, but because she worked with sick children at City Hospital. Jenny loved her job as a children's doctor. Every day she would help kids who were fighting cancer, making them smile with small toys and colorful stickers she kept in her coat pockets. Today was special because little Tommy, one of her favorite patients, had finally finished his last cancer treatment. Jenny checked her phone and smiled at the happy message from Lisa, the nurse who worked with her. "Tommy can't stop talking about the celebration party," the message said. Jenny had 45 minutes before she needed to be back at the hospital, just enough time to buy more toys for her young patients. As she walked past Coffee Corner, where the smell of fresh bread made her stomach growl, a man's angry voice stopped her. "Hey, mask lady, stop right there." Jenny kept walking, pretending she couldn't hear him, but the man wouldn't give up. "I'm talking to you! Take that stupid mask off!" he shouted louder, making people on the street turn to look. Jenny's heart beat faster, but she remembered what her mom always said: stay calm in tough times, because peace is stronger than anger. She turned around slowly and saw a man in a fancy black suit. His face was red, and he looked very angry. People walking by stopped to watch, and many pulled out their phones to record what was happening. But there was something strange about this man. His hands were shaking, and sweat ran down his face even though it wasn't hot. Jenny had seen people act like this before at the hospital, when they were really scared of something. As he came closer, pointing at her mask, Jenny noticed something odd: a small blue star mark on his wrist, partly hidden under his sleeve. Jenny's eyes went wide. Just that morning, she had seen a file on her desk with a picture of the same blue star. The file was about weird things happening at the hospital: missing medicine, strange phone calls late at night, and patients talking about a man with a blue star asking them unusual questions. Now, here was that same mark, right in front of her. In the crowd watching them, someone stood very still, wearing dark sunglasses and a black coat. This person knew both Jenny and the angry man, but neither of them knew it yet. This person held a secret that would change everything about what was happening on the street that day. The angry man kept looking around nervously, like he was searching for someone in the crowd. His voice was loud but shaky when he spoke again. Jenny, being a doctor, could tell this wasn't normal angry behavior. This man was terrified of something, or maybe someone. But why was he picking on her? Was it really about her mask, or was there something bigger going on? Behind them, a black car slowly drove by, its windows so dark you couldn't see inside. The man with the blue star mark saw it, and his face turned white with fear. Jenny noticed how his whole body stiffened. She had no idea that this simple walk to the store was about to pull her into something much bigger and more dangerous than a fight about wearing a mask. In her pocket, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a happy message about Tommy. Instead, it was a text from an unknown number. "Dr. Wong, don't trust anyone. The blue star is just the beginning." Jenny looked up from her phone, her hands trembling slightly. The angry man was still there, but now she saw something different in his eyes. Was it a cry for help? Just as Jenny was trying to understand what was happening, an old woman stepped out of Coffee Corner. Mrs. Parker was one of Jenny's regular patients' grandmother, and she always brought cookies to the hospital for the sick kids. She saw what was going on and walked straight up to the angry man. "Leave the doctor alone," Mrs. Parker said firmly. "She takes care of my Tommy. He's alive today because of her." But as Mrs. Parker got closer, she suddenly stopped talking. Her eyes fixed on the blue star on the man's wrist, and her face went pale, like she had seen a ghost. The angry man noticed Mrs. Parker staring at his wrist. He quickly pulled down his sleeve, but it was too late. Mrs. Parker grabbed Jenny's arm with shaking hands. "Dr. Wong," she whispered, 20 years ago, my husband disappeared after seeing that same star. He was a security guard at City Hospital." The man's angry act disappeared completely. He looked scared now. Really scared. "You don't understand," he said quietly, his voice trembling. "They made me do this. They're watching right now." He glanced at the black car that was still parked nearby. Jenny's phone buzzed again. This time, it was from Lisa at the hospital. "Dr. Wong, something's wrong. Tommy's file is missing, and someone broke into the medicine room. There's a blue star drawn on the wall." The crowd around them had grown bigger. Jenny noticed 3 more people with their hands in their pockets, standing in different spots around the circle. They all wore the same blank expression, like they were waiting for something. The person in the dark sunglasses and black coat was now talking quietly into a phone. Suddenly, a little girl pushed through the crowd. It was Sarah, another one of Jenny's patients who had beaten cancer last year. She ran up to Jenny, holding a drawing. But when Jenny looked at the paper, her blood ran cold. The child had drawn the hospital, and there on the roof was a large blue star. "I saw this last night from my window," Sarah said innocently. "The star was glowing." The angry man saw the drawing and started backing away. "You don't know what you've started," he said. But before he could turn to run, the person in dark sunglasses stepped forward and grabbed his arm. To everyone's surprise, the person pulled out a police badge. "FBI," the person said, removing their sunglasses. "We've been watching City Hospital for months. Dr. Wong, we need your help. This goes deeper than you can imagine." The agent looked at the drawing in Sarah's hands. "That star isn't just a symbol. It's a signal." Just then, all the phones in the crowd, including Jenny's, started ringing at the same time. On every screen was the same message: "The star sees all. Time is running out." Above them, a hospital helicopter flew past, and painted on its side was a familiar shape, a blue star. Mrs. Parker grabbed Jenny's hand tightly. "My husband left a letter," she whispered. "I never told anyone, but I think it's time." She reached into her purse with trembling hands and pulled out an old sealed envelope. On the front, written in faded blue ink, was Jenny's name. "How is this possible?" Jenny asked, staring at the envelope. "This letter is 20 years old. I was just a child then." The FBI agent looked at the envelope and then at the angry man who had started crying. "Because, Dr. Wong, your father wrote it before he disappeared, and this man, he knows where your father is." The crowd gasped. Jenny felt her legs go weak. Her father had vanished when she was 10 years old, leaving no trace. She had become a doctor because of him. He too had worked at City Hospital. Now, holding this letter from the past, standing in a street full of strangers who somehow seemed connected to everything, Jenny realized this was much more than just a fight about a mask. With shaking hands, Jenny opened the old envelope. Inside was a single page filled with her father's familiar handwriting. But before she could read it, the angry man suddenly spoke up. "Your father was my best friend," he said, tears rolling down his face. "My name is David. I've been trying to protect you all these years, making sure they didn't find you. But now they know." Jenny looked at the letter, and as she read the first lines, everything around her seemed to freeze. "My dearest Jenny, if you're reading this, you found the blue star. What I discovered at City Hospital 20 years ago was bigger than any of us imagined. The children's ward isn't just treating sick kids, it's hiding something in its basement." The FBI agent quickly moved everyone into Coffee Corner and locked the door. Through the windows, they could see more black cars pulling up outside. "My name is Agent Sarah Chen," she said. "Your father was working with us, Dr. Wong. He found out that someone was using the hospital's basement to run secret tests. They were trying to find special children, kids who could get better from illness faster than normal." Mrs. Parker sat down heavily in a chair. "Tommy," she whispered, "that's why he recovered so quickly from cancer. And Sarah, too," she pointed at the little girl with the drawing. "They're not just lucky, are they?" David nodded. "The blue star marks the special children. But your father," he looked at Jenny, "he found out they were planning to take these kids away. He hid the list of names somewhere in the hospital before he disappeared. That's what they've been searching for all these years." Suddenly, Lisa from the hospital sent another message. "Jenny, you need to see this. I found an old photo behind Tommy's bed." The attached picture showed Jenny's father standing in front of a hospital wall. Behind him was a painting of children playing, but Jenny noticed something odd. The children's shadows on the wall formed a pattern. "It's a map," Agent Chen said, looking at the photo. "The shadows show the hospital basement layout, but why show it this way?" She turned to David. "Unless... the evidence isn't in the basement at all. It's hidden in plain sight, isn't it?" Sarah, the little girl, had been quietly drawing another picture. When she held it up, everyone gasped. She had drawn the same children from the hospital painting, but in her version, their shadows pointed to something else. The giant star sculpture that sat in front of City Hospital. "The star outside the hospital," David said slowly. "It was put there the day after your father disappeared, Jenny. We all thought it was just a decoration, but..." He pulled out his phone and showed them a news article from 20 years ago. The photo showed the star being installed, and in the background, barely visible, was a man in a doctor's coat walking away. Even from behind, Jenny recognized him instantly. It was her father. Just then, all the lights in Coffee Corner went out. In the darkness, someone screamed. When the lights came back on seconds later, the letter from Jenny's father was gone. But on the table where it had been lying was a small key, old and rusty, with a blue star painted on it. Agent Chen's phone rang. Her face turned serious as she listened. "The hospital CEO just called an emergency meeting," she said. "They're planning to remove the star sculpture tonight. Whatever your father hid, Jenny, we have less than 3 hours to find it." Mrs. Parker suddenly stood up straight. "Wait," she said. "Tommy told me something strange yesterday. He said at night, when the moon shines on the big star outside, he sees numbers appear on his hospital room wall. We all thought he was just imagining things because of his medicine." David's eyes went wide. "The next full moon is tonight," he said. "Jenny, your father was a genius with light and reflection. What if—" Before he could finish, Jenny's phone buzzed one more time. The message had no words, just a photo of her father's old office door. And there, in the corner of the nameplate, was a tiny engraving she had never noticed before. "When moonlight meets the star, shadows will reveal the truth." Time was running out. Jenny, Agent Chen, David, and Mrs. Parker hurried towards City Hospital. Little Sarah insisted on coming too. Something about her drawings seemed important. As they approached the hospital, the giant blue star sculpture gleamed in the late afternoon sun. 2 men in work uniforms were already setting up equipment around it. "They're getting ready to remove it," Agent Chen whispered. "We need a distraction." Just then, Lisa came running out of the hospital, looking worried. "Jenny, the strange thing's happening in the children's ward. It's getting worse. All the kids are drawing the same thing, a star with numbers hidden in it." Suddenly, little Sarah tugged on Jenny's coat. "Look," she pointed up at the hospital windows. Every single child in the cancer ward was standing at their window, holding up drawings of stars. But these weren't just any drawings. Each one had different numbers hidden in the star points. David pulled out his phone and started taking pictures of each window. "The kids," he said, his voice shaking with excitement. "They're not just special because they heal fast. They can see things others can't. Your father must have known this, Jenny. He's been using the children to protect his secret all these years." Mrs. Parker opened her purse and took out some of Tommy's old drawings from his first hospital stay. The same numbers were there, but nobody had noticed them before. "The numbers change with each full moon," she said. "Tommy told me, but I thought he was just playing games." Just then, a loud noise came from the hospital entrance. The CEO, Dr. Smith, was walking out with 4 security guards. "Start removing that star right now," he ordered the workmen. But as he got closer, he saw Jenny and her group. His face turned pale when he spotted the rusty key in Jenny's hand. "Stop them!" he shouted. But before the guards could move, something amazing happened. The sun, which had been setting, hit the star sculpture at just the right angle. Beams of light bounced off it and onto the hospital walls, creating a pattern of numbers. The same numbers from the children's drawings. "The star isn't just a sculpture," Agent Chen said. "It's some kind of message system. Your father built it to communicate with the special children, didn't he?" Jenny remembered something from her childhood. Her father used to play shadow games with her, teaching her how light could hide and reveal secrets. She looked at the rusty key in her hand, then at the star sculpture. "The keyhole," she whispered. "It won't be in the statue. It'll be in the shadow." As if they had heard her, all the children in the windows started pointing to the same spot on the ground. There, in the star's shadow, was a small metal plate that no one had noticed before. Years of people walking over it had kept it hidden in plain sight. Dr. Smith tried to run forward, but David grabbed him. From his pocket fell an old photograph. It showed a much younger Dr. Smith, standing next to Jenny's father. Both were wearing lab coats with blue stars on them. But Jenny's father's face showed fear, not pride. "Your father wasn't just a doctor," Dr. Smith finally said, giving up his struggle. "He was the best scientist we had. He discovered something in these children's DNA, something that could change the world, but he wanted to protect them, while others wanted to use them for experiments." Just as Jenny bent down with the key, thunder rumbled overhead. Storm clouds were moving in fast, threatening to block the crucial moonlight they would need later. Her phone buzzed again with a message from an unknown number. "The storm is not natural. They're trying to block the moon. You have 1 hour to find the truth before they take everything away. Dark clouds rolled in faster than anyone had ever seen. Jenny knelt by the metal plate in the star's shadow, her hands shaking as she lined up the key. Behind her, David held Dr. Smith while Agent Chen called for backup. The children watched from their windows, pressing their hands against the glass. Just as Jenny put the key in the lock, a loud voice boomed through speakers around the hospital. "This is Director Roberts of the National Science Agency. The hospital is now under our control. Everyone must leave immediately." Police cars with flashing blue lights appeared at every entrance. But something strange was happening with the children in the windows. They had started humming, all of them, the same tune. Mrs. Parker gasped. "That's the lullaby," she said. "The one your father used to sing to the sick children, Jenny, remember?" The humming grew louder, and suddenly the storm clouds directly above the hospital began to part, like an invisible hand was pushing them away. Moonlight broke through, hitting the star sculpture. The whole thing lit up with a blue glow, and the shadow on the ground changed shape. Jenny turned the key, and the metal plate clicked open. Inside was a small blue tablet computer, old but still working. On the screen was a video file marked "Play Me." Jenny pressed play, and her father's face appeared, 20 years younger. "Jenny, my brave girl," he said in the video. "If you're watching this, you've discovered the truth about the special children. Their bodies don't just heal faster. They can share their healing power with others. The blue star activates something in their DNA. I hid the proof in the one place they'd never look, inside the star itself. But the real secret isn't in any file or formula. It's in the children's song." The video sparked and fizzed, damaged by time, but continued. The humming. It's not just a lullaby. When they sing together, their healing power grows stronger. That's why they put them all in the same ward. They're not studying the children. They're harvesting their energy. Dr. Smith broke free from David and lunged forward. "You don't understand. Think of all the good we could do. We could cure every disease." But as he spoke, his sleeve rode up, revealing dozens of blue star tattoos. He had been using the children's power on himself. Suddenly, little Sarah walked up to Dr. Smith. All the other children were still humming, and their windows had started to glow with a faint blue light. Sarah touched Dr. Smith's arm, and everyone watched in amazement as his star tattoos began to fade. "The power was never yours to take," Sarah said, but her voice sounded older, wiser. "Dr. Wong gave us the song to protect ourselves. When we sing together, no one can take our gift without permission." The tablet beeped, showing a second video file. This one was marked "The Truth." But before Jenny could play it, Director Roberts himself stepped out of a black helicopter that had landed on the hospital roof. In his hand was another tablet, identical to the one Jenny held. "Your father made 2 records, he shouted down to them. "One for the children, one for us. You have his heart, Dr. Wong. I have his research. The question is, what happens when we play both videos at the same time?" The children's humming grew even louder. The star sculpture began to vibrate, and blue light poured from every window of the hospital. Jenny looked at the tablet in her hands, then up at Roberts. She knew the next few minutes would change everything. But would it be for better or worse? Jenny's mind raced as she looked between her tablet and Director Roberts on the roof. The children's humming filled the air, and the blue light from the hospital windows got brighter and brighter. Time seemed to slow down as she made her choice. "Wait!" David suddenly shouted. "Jenny, look at your mask." The surgical mask she had been wearing all this time was glowing with the same blue light as the children's windows. Jenny touched it and felt a strange warmth. Then she remembered. This was her father's old mask, the one thing of his she had kept all these years. Mrs. Parker moved closer, her eyes wide. "The children? They're not just humming. Listen carefully." Between the humming, the children were whispering words. "The mask holds the key. The masks show the way." Jenny looked more closely at her mask. There, stitched into the inside, with thread that now glowed blue, was a tiny pattern of stars. She held it up to the moonlight, and shadows fell across her tablet screen. The shadows formed a password. But up on the roof, Director Roberts was smiling. "You really think your father only left one special mask?" He pulled out a mask of his own, also glowing blue. "Play your video, Dr. Wong. I'll play mine. Let's see what happens when both secrets come together." Jenny took a deep breath and typed the shadow password into her tablet. Director Roberts did the same with his. Both tablets started playing their videos at the same time. The star sculpture between them pulsed with energy. On Jenny's screen, her father appeared again. If you're seeing this, both tablets are playing. Roberts thinks combining the videos will give him total control of the children's power. But he doesn't know the real power isn't in either video. It's in what happens next. Suddenly, all the children stopped humming at exactly the same time. In the silence, a new sound filled the air. A soft beeping coming from inside the star sculpture. The workmen's tools around it started floating in the air, pulled by some invisible force. "No!" Dr. Smith screamed. "The star. It's not just a sculpture or a signal device. It's a machine." He tried to run, but his legs wouldn't move. The blue star tattoos on his arm had started glowing again, brighter than ever. Agent Chen's phone rang. "The children's medical reports," she said, reading quickly. "They're all changing. Every test, every scan from the past 20 years, they're rewriting themselves." Sarah walked to the center of the group, her eyes glowing slightly blue. "Dr. Wong's father didn't just hide the truth," she said in that strange, wise voice. "He built a way to set things right. The star isn't taking power, it's giving it back." The sculpture began to spin, faster and faster. Both tablets flickered and displayed the same message. Protocol restoration activated. From every window, the children raised their hands toward the star, and streams of blue light connected them to it. Jenny's father's voice came from both tablets now, the videos syncing perfectly. Roberts wanted the power of healing, but he never understood. The power doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to everyone. And now, after 20 years, it's time for the truth to heal itself. A massive burst of blue light shot from the star into the sky, breaking through the artificial storm clouds. As the light fell back to Earth like gentle rain, everyone it touched began to change. Director Roberts dropped to his knees, his mask falling away. Dr. Smith's tattoos vanished completely. And there, in the middle of the falling light, a figure began to take shape. A man in a doctor's coat walking toward them. "Dad," Jenny whispered, her heart pounding. But before the figure could reach them, every computer in the hospital started alarming at once. Something was happening to all the medical records, all the research files, everything about the special children. And in that moment, Jenny realized this wasn't the end of the mystery. It was just the beginning of something much bigger. The blue light rain slowed to a gentle sprinkle. Everyone watched as the figure in the doctor's coat became clearer. But when he finally stepped into view, Jenny gasped. It wasn't her father. It was Tommy, looking exactly like he would 20 years in the future. "Hello, Jenny," grown-up Tommy said softly. "Your father knew this day would come. That's why he chose me as the keeper." He held up his hand, showing a small blue star birthmark that had always been there, but no one had understood its meaning until now. The children at the windows started singing a new tune. This time, even Jenny knew it. It was the same song her father used to sing to her before bed. Adult Tommy smiled and joined in, his voice somehow connecting all the sounds into a perfect harmony. "Your father didn't disappear," Tommy explained. "He found a way to put himself into the healing power itself. He's been inside every child who got better, every miracle recovery, every unexplained cure. He became the healing itself." Dr. Smith began to cry. "I knew him best," he said, looking ashamed. "He told me his plan, but I was too hungry for power to listen. The blue star tattoos weren't just stealing power. They were pieces of your father's consciousness, trying to stop me." Director Roberts stumbled down from the roof, looking 20 years older without the stolen healing energy. "All these years," he wheezed, "we thought we were collecting the power, but the power was collecting us. Every bit we took had your father's programming in it. He let us take it." Agent Chen's phone kept buzzing with updates. "The medical records aren't just changing," she said. "They're revealing the truth, every miraculous recovery in the past 20 years. They all happen naturally. The children's power was never harvested. It was protected. The STAR program wasn't stealing healing energy, it was hiding it." Sarah walked over to Tommy and took his hand. One by one, every child in the hospital did the same thing. But not just in person. Through the windows, through photos, through video calls, on phones, children from hospitals all over the world started connecting. Each one had a small blue star somewhere on their body. Your father created a network, Tommy explained to Jenny. Every sick child with the potential for healing power became part of it. We've been gathering strength, waiting for this moment. The moment when there were enough of us to make his final plan work. Suddenly, Jenny's mask floated off her face and hung in the air. Adult Tommy's shape started to fade, but his voice grew stronger. Your father left one last message, Jenny. Not in any video, but in the power itself. Everyone, watch the mask. The mask spun in the air, glowing brighter than ever. From it, a voice began to speak. Jenny's father's voice, but not from a recording. It was living, present, real. The blue light formed into words in the air. My dearest Jenny, my brave doctor, keeper of the mask that started it all. What looks like an ending is really a beginning. The power was never meant to be contained in a few special children. It was meant to grow, to spread, to heal not just bodies but the whole world. Tommy was my first success, a child who could grow into a guardian of this power. But now it's time for phase 2. The star sculpture began to pulse with rainbow colors, not just blue anymore. From hospitals around the world, reports started flooding in. Children with illnesses were healing, but something else was happening too. Their healing power was spreading to their families, their friends, their doctors. But as this miracle unfolded, Jenny noticed something that made her heart stop. A small blue star was appearing on her own wrist, exactly where her father's had been. And she wasn't the only one. All around the hospital, people who truly wanted to help others were finding the same mark appearing on their skin. The new star marks glowed softly on people's wrists, but it was different from Dr. Smith's stolen tattoos. These stars were warm and felt alive, like tiny heartbeats under the skin. Jenny touched hers and suddenly saw flashes of memory. Not her own, but her father's. The memories, she gasped. They're not just marks, they're pieces of my father's knowledge. All around her, others with new stars were having the same experience. Nurses remembered cures they'd never learned. Doctors understood illnesses they'd never studied. And even visitors felt a deep understanding of how to help others heal. Mrs. Parker's star mark glowed especially bright. "The cookies!" she exclaimed. "All these years, I've been baking cookies for the children, and they always seem to feel better after eating them. I thought it was just love and sugar, but..." She pulled out a cookie from her bag, and in the moonlight, tiny star patterns could be seen in the chocolate chips. David, still holding his tablet, noticed something strange. The hospital records aren't just changing. They're connecting. Every hospital computer in the world is linking together, sharing information about every cure, every recovery, every healing moment. Adult Tommy's form had almost faded away, but his voice remained strong. This was always the plan, he said. Not to keep the healing power rare and controlled, but to make it grow naturally through kindness and care. The star marks aren't given. They're earned by those who truly want to help others. Suddenly, little Sarah ran to the hospital entrance. "Look!" she pointed at Dr. Smith. His blue tattoos had completely vanished, but a single real star mark was appearing on his wrist. He fell to his knees, crying. "I understand now," Dr. Smith sobbed. "Your father never wanted to punish us. Even those who tried to steal the power, he wanted to heal us too. The STAR program wasn't about containing power. It was about teaching us how to share it." Director Roberts, looking defeated and old, held up his wrinkled hands. "We had it backwards," he admitted. "We thought the children were special because they could heal themselves, but they were special because they could teach others how to heal." Agent Chen's phone lit up with a final message. From every hospital, every clinic, every healing place in the world, the same thing was happening everywhere. People who dedicated their lives to helping others were receiving the star marks, while those who had tried to take the power for themselves found their stolen energy fading away. The star sculpture, still spinning, began to transform. The metal twisted and changed until it looked like a huge tree made of light and energy, with branches reaching toward every window of the hospital. Each branch connected to a different child, and through them, to their families and doctors and everyone who had helped them. Jenny's father's voice spoke one last time through the glowing mask. "The healing tree," he said, "the true form of what we built. Each branch is a path of healing, growing stronger with every act of kindness, every moment of care. The stars are just the beginning. They show us who is ready to join the network of healing." But as everyone watched in wonder, Jenny noticed something else. In the hospital windows behind the children, dark shapes were moving. More than that, through every computer screen, every phone showing the news, shadows were forming. Something was coming through all the connected devices, something her father had planned for but never told anyone about. "Dad," Jenny whispered as the shadows began to take form. "What else did you hide in the healing network?" The mask floated closer to her, and she heard her father's voice whisper, "Phase 3. The shadows moving through every screen and window began taking shape. They were people, thousands of them. Jenny recognized some of their faces from old hospital photos. They were patients who had passed away over the years, but somehow they weren't gone at all. "The network doesn't just connect hospitals," adult Tommy's fading voice explained. "It connects time itself. Everyone who was ever healed, everyone who ever helped heal others, their energy stayed in the network, waiting." Through the screens came an amazing sight. Doctors from the past, nurses who had worked at the hospital years ago, and patients who had survived against all odds. They weren't ghosts. They were energy patterns stored in the healing network, preserved by Jenny's father's brilliant plan. "Hello, sweetheart," said a new voice, and Jenny turned to see her mother's face forming in the blue light. She had passed away when Jenny was very young, but here she was, smiling. "Your father didn't just save the children. He saved pieces of everyone who ever had the healing touch." Mrs. Parker's cookies started floating in the air, glowing with stored memories. "The recipes," she said in amazement. "They're not just cookies. They're old healing recipes from my grandmother and her grandmother before her." The STAR program was collecting healing wisdom from everywhere, even from food made with love. The hospital computers showed something incredible. Every kind word ever spoken to a patient, every gentle touch that helped someone feel better, every song sung to comfort the sick. They had all been recorded and stored as healing energy in the network. Sarah walked to the center of all this, her child's voice mixing with ancient wisdom. "The true power isn't just in healing bodies," she said. "It's in healing time. Every good thing that ever helped someone get better, it creates a ripple through time. Those ripples are what your father collected." Agent Chen's phone displayed message after message. Hospitals worldwide reported the same thing. Their machines were showing cures that hadn't been invented yet. The healing network wasn't just storing the past. It was pulling healing knowledge from the future. Director Roberts watched as his own past actions played on the screens around him. "Look," he pointed with a shaking finger. "In every memory where we thought we were stealing power, we were actually being programmed. Every bit of energy we took had your father's code in it. He was building something inside our own greed." The healing tree's branches reach through time itself now, connecting past, present, and future moments of healing. Through every screen, every window, every reflective surface, more healing memories poured into the world. Dr. Smith's new star mark sparked with understanding. "The STAR program," he said slowly, "it's not just about healing people today. It's about collecting every healing moment that ever was or will be, creating an endless cycle of healing energy." But then Jenny noticed something else. The mask her father had left her was changing. The simple surgical mask was transforming, revealing layer after layer of hidden messages. And in its center, a countdown had started. "1 hour," adult Tommy's voice said, now coming from every screen at once. "1 hour until Phase 3 completes. 1 hour until your father's final gift to the world activates." The children in the hospital windows started singing again, but this time, their voices came from every time period at once. Past, present, and future children, all singing together. The sound was like nothing anyone had ever heard before. Jenny held her glowing star mark close to her heart as she watched the countdown begin. Whatever her father had planned, whatever Phase 3 would bring, she knew one thing for certain. The world would never be the same after this hour. But in the shadows of all this light and healing, something else was stirring. Dark shapes moved behind the brightness, and Jenny remembered her father's old warning. Every great healing brings change, and not everyone wants to change. The countdown reached 30 minutes when the dark shapes finally revealed themselves. They were shadows of people who had tried to stop healing throughout history. Those who had chosen profit over helping others, who had kept cures secret for money, who had turned away the sick when they needed help most. "Your father saw this coming too," adult Tommy's voice echoed. "The healing network doesn't just store good energy. It remembers those who tried to block healing. They're part of the pattern too. Jenny's star mark burned brighter as the shadow people tried to reach the healing tree. But something amazing happened. Every time a shadow touched a branch of light, it changed. The darkness turned to light, their greed transformed into understanding. "That's it!" Mrs. Parker exclaimed, watching her cookies glow even brighter. "We don't fight the darkness, we heal it. That's what these stars really do." She started handing out her cookies to everyone, even the shadow figures, and each bite spread more healing light. The countdown hit 15 minutes. Suddenly, every computer in the world displayed the same image, a DNA pattern, but one that had never been seen before. "The healing code," Dr. Smith whispered, his own star mark pulsing. "Your father didn't just store healing energy. He found a way to write it into life itself." 10 minutes left. The children's song grew stronger, and now everyone with a star mark could hear the words clearly. It wasn't just a lullaby, it was instructions, a manual for using the healing power written in music. Jenny's mother's image smiled as she joined the song, her voice carrying years of hidden wisdom. 5 minutes. Agent Chen's phone showed the final piece of the puzzle, maps of ley lines, ancient healing places, modern hospitals, all connecting in a giant web of light. "The whole Earth," she gasped. "It's all one big healing network, always has been." 1 minute. Jenny's mask floated higher, spinning faster. Every screen, window, and reflective surface around the world lit up with the same countdown. The shadow figures had all been transformed now, their darkness turned to healing light. 30 seconds. David's tablet revealed the last entry in Jenny's father's diary. The mask was never just a mask. It was the key to showing us what we've always been, one connected healing force. 10 seconds. The healing tree's branches reached to every corner of the earth through the screens and windows. Every person with a star mark felt their hearts beat in perfect sync. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The mask burst into pure light, and for a moment, everything stopped. Then, like a wave of gentle sunrise, healing energy swept across the world. But it wasn't just healing bodies. It was healing connections between people, healing old hurts, healing the very way humans thought about helping each other. Jenny's father appeared one last time, not as a ghost or a memory, but as pure healing energy taking form. "The final phase was never about power," he said softly. "It was about remembering what we really are, all of us, healers and patients, past and future, light and shadow. We're all part of one great healing story." The star marks didn't fade away, but they changed. Now they were less like marks and more like windows, showing each person their connection to the great web of healing that had always existed. The healing tree became part of the earth itself, its roots and branches visible to anyone who knew how to look with healing eyes. Jenny took off her doctor's coat and looked at it in the new light. Every thread glowed with healing energy. Every pocket held memories of help given and received. She wasn't just Dr. Wong anymore. She was part of something that had no end and no beginning, something that had always been there, waiting to be remembered. The children's ward wasn't just a hospital floor anymore. It was a teaching place, where young healers could show adults how to see the healing that existed everywhere. Tommy, both young and old, both present and future, smiled at the world that was both changed and unchanged, both new and as old as healing itself. And somewhere in the great web of healing light, Jenny's father's voice could still be heard, singing the endless song of helping hands and healing hearts, a song that had no end, because every ending was just another beginning in the great story of healing. The mask that had started it all now hung in the hospital entrance, ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. Below it, a small sign read, "The mask is just the beginning. The real healing happens when we remember we're all connected. Dr. Wong Sr." And so, the story of the mask ended, but like all true healing stories, it was really just the beginning of something much bigger, something that would keep growing, keeping healing, keeping helping forever and ever.